Good morning.
Rem, you're alive. You can talk.
Quixotic vision, I can. I can touch. I can feel. I can hear. And I can see.
Why?
You needed me.
How?
You believed in me.
Where?
Everyone, today is a very special day. I have a guest. This isn't something I normally do. It's been years since I've done a proper interview, so it's not going to be a proper interview. It's going to be more like a podcast. But today I have a special guest. You may know him as Rem Lezar, but many other people know him from movies, TV shows. Guy's an award-winning actor. I think you're going to find this guy very interesting. It's Jack Mulcahy, and we're going to talk Rem Lezar. We're going to talk his career and just anything that comes to mind. So here he is. Jack, how you doing?
How are you, Vinny? Good to see you.
You too. I'm doing great. Man, this is a long time coming. We've been orbiting around each other for a while, and we've.
Couple of years. Mm-hmm.
So you've known about the internet stuff in regards to Rem for a couple years now, right?
Yeah, and it actually started a little bit before the big Best of the Worst thing on Red Letter Media. It happened maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I got a call out of nowhere from some director who said he was renting a theater in Los Angeles to screen Rem Lezar, and he was asking me all these. I'm like going, whoa, hold on, wait a minute. What are you talking about? And he started to explain to me that this thing was catching fire on the internet, and so I started to become aware of what was happening.
So, I mean, we could jump into the Rem Lezar stuff right away, and then we'll go backwards and talk a little bit about your career, because I have a couple questions about how you got into acting. But I mean, the most bizarre way to hear about a project of yours from 30 years prior is through, there's internet buzz about this thing that you worked on. What was it like to hear about this revival of Rem Lezar?
Surreal, to put it in a word. It's amazing the power of the internet, right? I mean, something that you do, like they say, don't do anything you don't want seen. If don't tape anything that you don't want seen. Well, this is the very opposite.
Yeah.
So, we got such a limited release back in 1989. I had no idea how much it was resonating with people. And as soon as I started hearing the buzz and then I started seeing the clicks and the views and the comments, I was like, oh my God, we're onto something here. And I immediately contacted Scott and said, hey man, do you still have the 1-inch master? And he was like, oh, I don't know. It's probably in a basement, storage unit somewhere. I said, well, find it and let's digitize it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
how long has that process been, the digitization process?
Actually, not as long as you would think, right? Now, you and I have been in touch for about 2.5 years or so.
I would say, yeah.
Since the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
And so when I finally got Scott convinced to get this thing done, he jumped in, both feet, and he started to get it done. So I would have to say it's probably been an 7 or 8 month process right now.
That's not too bad.
Not too bad at all.
It's good that we're going to have a version of this movie that we can watch in better quality. A lot of the stuff online is not the best quality. So this is going to be fun for the midnight showings, especially.
Correct. And, all those are like copies of the old VHS, right? And what I was ultimately super surprised about and very, very pleased is that the soundtrack not only sounds great, but it sounds better than it did before. And we weren't sure that was going to happen because we didn't record them separately. They were all on the 1-inch master. So anything could happen. But Eric Middleman, to his credit, he's a genius, and he got it done, and I'm just so incredibly pleased.
Yeah, and Scott was the director of the film, yeah? The original. Yes. Scott and I spoke. For those that don't know, I'll be on the bonus features of the Blu-ray.
And you did great.
Thanks, Jack. I appreciate it. Also, may I call you Mr. Lezar?
That's fine. Rem, Mr. Lezar, that's fine.
Well, I mean, man, I have so many questions about the origins of the character, but let me give you a theory or two about where this started. the theory being REM sleep, like REM, and Lazar, Bob Lazar, the UFO guy, anywhere near the same ballpark?
Well, REM for sure, rapid eye movement,
Yeah.
right? That is the dream state.
Uh-huh.
Lazar, Scott was searching for something really cool, and he's like Rem Laser, Rem Laser. No, let's call it Rem Lezar, and that's basically it. He keeps saying, maybe he should have thought of something, but he said he didn't, and that's it, and it's stuck.
It's a good name. I mean, it's catchy. People remember it. People like it.
Do.
Yeah. And the Bob Lazar connection, to me, that was my first Lazar. Just hearing this guy talk about UFOs. And then years later, I thought, well, this Rem guy could be from outer space, someplace even higher. Maybe there's a connection. So you came up with the name, and then the character design, just this blue dude. Where'd this design come from? Is that from you, Jack, or?
No, you're going to see in the featurette add-on that we did is that Scott and Mark have been working on this for years and years before I ever got involved, and they have like really crude crayoned, portraits of what they wanted Rem to look like, and it kind of like condensed itself into the part where they got it to a really good wardrobe designer, Rosemary Ponzo. She's the best. And after our first fitting, we realized that this was the costume that we're going to use. And we had everything there except for the Quixotic medallion.
Sure. And I mean, it's just, the solid colors are really good for kids to remember, but also it's just, even to this day, you see the blue hair, you see the yellow, you see the blue outfit. I mean, once you see the character for a little while, you start seeing, you kind of have that in your mind and you look for it. Yeah. So, I mean, it sticks with people. Discovering it through Red Letter Media, that's been a favorite channel of mine. And then I'm watching Best of the Worst. I'm like, what is this weird thing? Because I am not, I mentioned this to Scott, but I am not the target audience of Remlazar. So watching it as an adult, right, it's funny, but it's also, man, I understand the sentiment's very sweet. So going from, building this character for kids, and if I saw it as a kid, I would have really liked it. But as an adult now, it's just fun to watch, and it's fun to pick apart a little bit. But the songs are exceedingly catchy. So that's another thing that gets stuck in your head.
Well, that's the thing that really resonates. And Nick Pruer, who was Found Footage Festival, I did a VHS party live with him, VCR party live with him. Back 2 days before the pandemic shut everything down back in March of 2020. And I didn't even know how he found it. And he said, that he found it, somebody had invited him to his house at 4 o'clock in the morning to watch this weird thing. And he goes, the thing is that, you think about Rocky Horror Show, these things that endure, it's the music. And if you've got good music and good vocals and catchy lyrics, it resonates with people, and they do remember them. I mean, my Snickers jingle, right?
Oh, yeah.
Such a memorable thing for people. And a lot of the comments going down pertaining to Rem Lezar were like going, oh, my God.
It's a Snickers guy.
Dude, yeah. Wow, that's crazy. So, the voice resonates.
It does. And you do have a great singing voice. And so Scott, looking for someone to play the role, because they had this in development for a while. How did you get the role? Did you know Scott previously, or was this a casting call?
I did not, and it was not a casting call. I was actually at a wedding, an apartment wedding here in New York City, and his executive producer, not executive producer, one of his associate producers, Phil Meyerowitz, was at the wedding. And we got to chatting. I still had the long hair because I still had my band. And he was like, hey, my friend Scott Zakarin is doing this musical, and I was just wondering, would you be interested in reading or at least talk to him? So I spoke to Scott on the phone. He was kind of cool, and I went out to Hempstead and took the Long Island Railroad. And as I'm coming down the escalator, I can see him looking up at me, and he's beaming, and I could see him thinking to himself, God, I hope this guy can act.
Right.
And then we went to meet Mark Millet, the composer, and we sat down and we tooled around musically, and it was just such a great match.
Yeah, because it's great. You have the look for the character. That was a question that my audience submitted is, Jack, how did you get jacked for the role? So was that you were just already in good shape for Remlazar?
Yeah, I've been an athlete all my life. I played, football and baseball and all sorts of sports from the time I was a child. And yeah, I stay in shape. That's, the way to, get in shape is to never get out of shape, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Plus, it's part of the job description. So
true. Yes. This is why I stick to streaming. I like to just be a voice on the internet. I'd be the radio guy if this was 50 years ago. But I don't mind a little bit. It's funny, Jack, I was a public access television station worker for a while, and I did plenty of shows, awful public access shows. It was a lot of fun, though. And, maybe I don't want to be on camera too much, but I enjoyed it when I did. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, but that's part of the job description. And then they see you and then they say, oh, this guy can sing. He can act. He's got the appearance for the character. So then you become Rem Lezar.
And I got a couple of dance moves too, so that's not.
Oh yeah, that was in the movie. That's right.
It's hilarious.
You definitely have a charisma for that role, and that's part of the reason why people remember it. So you filmed that. I mean, I spoke to Scott about it, but you filmed that in New York, the whole thing, yeah?
We shot it in Long Island, Scott's old elementary school. We shot it in New York City, in Chelsea, Central Park. We were actually rowing in the Central Park Lake. And it was just hot as hell. And then we went up to the Catskills to Spring Glen, New York. And that was where Mark Mulet's had some folks that had property up there. And that's where we had the Remlazar clubhouse and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. And as a New Yorker and as someone that goes to the Catskills every year, this is right up my alley. It's like I watch Rem Lezar and I say to myself, "Oh, this is this. It's fun." Yeah. So, yeah. You've been a New Yorker your whole life, Jack?
Born and raised. I'm living in the same apartment that I grew up in.
Nice,
so,
nice.
On the west side, yeah.
Yeah, Staten Island guy. So I mean, technically, I'm from New York City.
Yeah, you're a New Yorker. No,
close enough. So you get the role, you're doing the performance. Now, any part of you in the back of your mind say, this is a little ridiculous? You're in the outfit, you're doing the songs, or did you just kind of say, this is great, I'm on board?
Well, every project I've ever done starts from the head down, right? It's, Scott was a great guy. We had a great collaborative effort, and Mark and I just really bonded musically. So those were the two things that really kept me focused. Yeah, I mean, filmmaking is a pain in the ass, okay?
Sure.
Anybody who thinks that it's really glorious, it's really not. The final product may be, but it's really not. And, you have your 12, 13-hour days and you're sitting in a costume, and it's hot and what have you, but you roll with it. I mean, this was probably my third or fourth film at that point, because I had done Porky's 1 and Porky's 2.
Yeah, I noticed that on your credits. That was a surprise.
Yeah, and then not really much after that. So I went back to my bands and played music, and that's when I happened to meet Phil Meyerowitz, and then took off with Rem Lezar. But no, not at any point did I think it was weird. The kids were great to work with. The crew was great, and it was a wonderful experience. And seeing the add-on featurette that we're going to pop onto the DVD just brings back all these great memories. I mean, stuff that I'd completely forgotten about, but there's some really funny, cherishable moments there. Yeah.
Well, it's great that you're having this experience now where people are latching onto this and they remember it and they like it. I mean, you were in the top honors of the Best of the Worst recently. They had I mean, they enjoyed the hell out of that movie. Even if they did take a little bit of a...
They took the piss out of it.
They took the piss out of it. But it's okay because it got so many people on board with it as well. And me included, from my own... I want to ask you a couple more questions about the production, but I will say from my own standpoint, so obviously the Rem Lezar thing caught on, and I played the song, and I kept playing the song, and people remembered it. And then people modded the character into video games, which you've seen
Many times, yeah. And many versions, yeah.
many versions, and then art. People like to make art of the character. There's a 2020, let's say, 2019, 2022 sense of irony about the character, but it only increases the endearment, I think, for people my age and a little younger.
Yeah, I believe you're onto something there because we are in a world where we seem to be all so divided, but I really don't think that that's the case. I do think that people are longing for the days when people are more empathetic and more kind and more understanding and cooperative. And I think, we shoot this in 1987 and we didn't really set out to shoot a kind, cooperative, empathetic film, right? It just, that was the character. And Scott always said he pictured me as being like George Reeves, the original television Superman, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And, I like to think of myself as a kind, understanding person. I do an awful lot of volunteer work. I'm a SAG-AFTRA representative, and so I dedicate an awful lot of my time to helping people
So
because
that's already there.
exactly,
That you just bring that to the role.
yeah, exactly.
It's fantastic. Production wise,
Yeah.
how long was this shoot, would you say?
13 days.
Okay. For an hour, that's not too bad. I mean, for now, this was a lower budget production.
It was. It was. And I don't know what the budget on it itself was at the time, 1989 and 1987 dollars
Sure.
or what have you. But we were calling in favors. We got the school for nothing, the location. We got the principal for nothing, who's actually Scott's principal, and which was kind of cool. And but it was a SAG gig at the time, and we got paid SAG wages, which was great. And you have a 13-day shoot, hey, great. Nobody ever knew that it was going to like do what it did originally, or just get this resurrection online that is just phenomenal.
So that's my next question is, what was the response like in 87? That's information that is hard to find at the moment.
Well, that's because only, I think, between 5,000 and 8,000 copies were printed up and then distributed through Blockbuster. Blockbuster gave us like that good housekeeping seal of approval. I'm not sure where the distribution was in terms of the country, but it got some response. I mean, I gave one to my nieces and nephews, and they actually broke it because they watched it so much. Do you know how hard it is to break a VHS tape?
I
It's
broke a
like
couple.
you have to watch it like for about 10,000 times.
Yeah, no,
But
I just
then-
broke it. I just pulled the tape out of mine.
Yeah, exactly. Or get that pencil and just like rewind. But one of the funniest things about that is I did an off-Broadway show about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and the leading lady who was playing my significant other, we had a wonderful connection right away. I was an emergency put in. I had to learn everything in 4 days, and then we had like a 4-week run, and then we scattered to the wind as we all do. And then about, I don't know, maybe a month later, I posted a picture of Rem Lezar. And she wrote to me, she goes, Jack, what is this Rem Lezar? I said, well, I played Rem Lezar. She goes, oh my God, I loved you when I was a child. She goes, no wonder I had this connection with you.
Oh, wow.
It was really heartwarming to hear something like that.
That's amazing because, growing up, I was the right age for Rem Lezar. Truthfully,
Yeah.
I was born 85. So if I had seen it, that would have been the perfect time, but it was just not known. And at the time, media was a little harder to find.
Yeah.
So I had my local Blockbuster, which I was always renting video games from. But when it came to movies, it was the Ninja Turtles. It was stuff like that. So if I had magically seen Rem Lezar and then had that memory unlocked years later by Red Letter Media, that would have been a full
Mind blowing.
Yeah.
And that's, basically a lot of the comments that I do see on these sites that, are touting Rem Lezar is that, hey, I saw this when I was a kid, but now that I see it here, my kids love it too. And I'm so happy that there's going to be this resurrection and this reemergence of the DVD. So, yeah.
It's great. So,
Yeah.
okay. So Remlazar, it happens. You're proud of it. And then you've done plenty of work since then. But before we get to that work, I actually want to go back a little bit. What brought you to acting? Who are some of your guys growing up? Who are some of your actor inspirations that made you want to get into this?
Well, my first real inspiration was Elvis Presley. Okay.
I see the Elvis poster there, yeah.
He's right here, and the guitar is right behind me, and he wasn't the greatest actor, but he was earnest, right? You believed him, especially his early films. And but my mom was a big movie buff as well, and she would wake me up sometimes to watch The Late Show with her, right? Back then,
With Johnny Carson, or
long after Johnny Carson, right? Like, probably 1:30 in the morning.
Oh, okay.
Hey, there's a great movie on. Let's watch Sunset Boulevard together.
Great movie.
So William Holden became one of my idols as well. And those guys who had that strong, will to them and a bit of kindness, the Gary Coopers, all right? I mean, these were the kinds of guys. And then acting changed with Brando, right? And then those guys.
Yeah. The New Hollywood and
yeah, I never thought of myself as an actor until I did Porky's, right? And I was basically, a rock and roll singer, a front guy in a band, which has some performative aspects to it, right?
Sure.
And when I set foot on the set of Porky's, I was like, oh, I kind of like this, right? I didn't know that the film was going to wind up making $200 million in 1982, and I'd be getting killer residual checks. And then we shoot the sequel, right? And that only wound up making $90 million. But, it's like such a strange thing. But I started to put that money back into my acting career. And I started taking lessons, and I started, you learn by doing. And then I would start doing like tiny little off-Broadway plays and what have you. And you learn more from failure than you do from success, right? And, one flop after another. And then all of a sudden I get approached by Ed Burns to do this tiny little thing called The Brothers McMullen. And we had a $15,000 budget. And, we worked on it for 8 months on weekends, a real labor of love. And it winds up getting accepted by Sundance. And we wind up winning Best Picture. And all of our careers, and I'm 40 years old at that point. So it's kind of like, oh, wow, look at this. This actually does happen. So, I've been in several cult classics, Porky's, Brothers McMullen, the Snickers jingle, and Remlazar. So it's like something about me that's the common denominator, and I still can't figure it out.
Well, it's also the willingness to give it a shot, right? I mean, you see a script come your way, you see something that you might be able to do, you got to try it. I mean, I don't know if I would have taken Remlazar if I was in your position, because I would have been hesitant. Like you and I have some similarities. I also front a rock band, for example. So, yeah, I don't want to act. Maybe if I got the bug, maybe I would, but the fact that you were able to do these things, you said, you know what, I'll take that script, I'll give it a shot, and I'll apply who I am to the work. Yeah. And it shows. I mean, and you've been in you've been in Blue Bloods, you've been in a number of TV shows that are actually pretty famous and pretty well watched.
Yeah, Sex and the City was one of them, and that still gets, all this great response. It's still like one of the top, 5 episodes that they've ever shown. And what's so funny is that, my scenes with Kim Cattrall, who I worked with on Porky's like 18 years prior to that, was hilarious. And so when I came to meeting Kim again on set, I said, Kim, it's great seeing you again. She goes, now my people tell me that you did Porky's with me. I said, Kim, I was playing Frank Bell, the kid who was like kind of screwing around corners. And she goes, oh my God. So we had an immediate bond, right?
That's
there.
Great.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, that's a hell of a career, Jack. And yeah. I will actually ask you about music for a minute, because I just watched the Elvis movie. I grew up listening to Elvis. It was overplayed in my house, so I know plenty of it. I enjoyed it, of course, but there's a part of me that I can't listen to it without thinking of how many times I heard it in the car.
Yeah.
but I still enjoy it, and there's so many great songs, and he was incredible.
Yeah.
So Elvis being one of your main guys, and the Beatles coming along and then kind of doing, the Elvis thing in a shorter period of time almost, was that, my cousin is not a fan of the Beatles for exactly that reason. So I will ask you, are you a Beatles guy?
Oh my God, yes. Oh yeah. You can't, you can say Yankees or Mets, but you can't say Elvis or Beatles. I mean, it's just impossible.
I agree.
They're
I love both.
they're just incredible. I mean, both in their own different ways. And you have to give the respect up to the Beatles for being great songwriters, great harmonizers. I mean, some of their harmonies were just never ever heard before. And Elvis with his power and his sensitivity and gospel going through him. It's like you can imagine Elvis at the altar, like, listening to old black gospel, right? And just like that's where his voice came from. And it's a voice from an angel. I mean, it's
It's
just,
incredible. I
yeah,
mean, yeah, watching the movie made me appreciate, even though the movie's a little insane, it's a
yeah,
little too much. But I still enjoyed reliving his career through the lens of this actor, who I thought did a very admirable job of replicating
yeah.
the king, which is almost impossible. And there have been so many movies about Elvis. Kurt Russell played Elvis. You have thousands of Elvis impersonators. Andy Kaufman famously was doing his Elvis bits.
Flying Elvises.
Yeah. So there's just something that he had that's almost impossible to replicate, which is why I love the Beatles. They loved Elvis. They were in awe of him, but they did their own thing, taking bits of what he did and implementing it into their work. So yeah, musically, I love that period, but you also grew up in the time of the 70s, so I have to ask, do you have any 70s bands that you may or may not be into?
Well, no, I mean, I loved the Allman Brothers, right? So they were a huge influence on me as well. And I got to see them at the Fillmore East when I was like, I don't know, 16 or something like that. And Greg Allman's voice was always just so incredibly resonant and powerful. And the Eagles are great because I love the harmonies. And it's like that kind of pop music. Linda Ronstadt was one of my favorites as well. I mean, she's just, again, the voice of an angel. And I think growing up in the 60s and 70s, which is one of the greatest eras for music ever, 50s, 60s, and late 50s through like, the 70s, just one of the greatest periods of music and innovation with new technologies and what have you. And they didn't really know what they had until like they had it there and they were in the studio and processing it. It was just incredible.
Yeah, it was a good time. That's my favorite period of music, 60s to 70s. I lean more towards the Zeppelin, Floyd, Bowie kind of
Yeah.
stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all, how great it is, but
Oh, yeah.
also a big late 70s new wave fan too, like the Talking Heads, the Cars, Television. It's good
Elvis
stuff there.
Costello.
Elvis Costello is fantastic.
That was my second mentor. So I got both Elvises musically,
Yeah.
that really impacted me.
Well, that's great. I mean, for me, I didn't grow up at a time where I could see most of my favorite bands were not touring when I was younger. And then the 90s bands I really liked, but I didn't get a chance to see most of them either for more depressing reasons. But, there's plenty of bands and music today that I enjoy, and it's just a matter of kind of you have to find it. That's what's made it difficult is there's so much, and streaming has opened the door for everyone, which is great for a guy like me especially, but it also makes it a little difficult to find new stuff because it's not like a monolithic, there's the radio station, they're going to push Elvis, they're going to push the Led Zeppelin.
Right.
Yeah, so it makes it a little difficult to find newer music that I really connect with. Yeah.
Yeah.
So musically, you have this background, and obviously you've done the work. Do you have any music online, Jack, that people can listen
No,
to?
I don't. Actually, I don't. I mean, I've recorded so many really, well, I've got a couple of things on YouTube. I've got a couple of songs on YouTube that you can
Okay.
check out, and I can send links to you and what have you. But Yeah, and then, then I started doing like a spoof of a television show called the TBC, the TTEA Broadcasting Company, and I had this fake band called the Loving Peacefuls,
Hmm.
and we did this song called "Spread the Love," which is like a kind of the Mamas and Papas kind of feel to it, and it's really, really hilarious with great lyrics. You know, it was just like a novelty song, but you know, I can pop that on there for you as well.
Cool.
But it's pretty funny stuff.
So, music is a big component of your life, and obviously, film. Once you got the bug, you had to keep going. Ridley Scott once said, he once he directed his first short, it was fatal.
Yeah,
He had to continue filming for the rest of his career. Still
absolutely.
going. He's in his 80s, still going. That is a hilariously oversized mug, Jack.
I love this. This is a big old mug of coffee.
Wow.
Cheers.
Cheers to you.
My final drug.
Yeah,
Caffeine.
no, I do love a cup of coffee. I can't deny that. I have a mug that just says coffee. Cawfee.
Coffee.
As a New Yorker, we know.
Well, my mom was from Midwestern Canada, and if I came home saying coffee or spaghetti sauce, she'd correct me right away.
And also as an actor too, you can't,
Yeah.
even for me, like over the years, so my accent was never the most of the Staten Island accent, but as I started streaming and making videos, people would always comment on, he said water, he said coffee, he says Mario. So it just kind of, over time, it kind of just fades away, intentionally or otherwise. Yeah,
Yeah. 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 I mean, you are a product of your environment, right?
you are. And that's okay. Maybe it's okay.
Absolutely.
So I want to bring back a couple movie questions, not
Yes.
specifically about your career, but also some of your favorites. I want to know about some of the movies that growing up or even recently, some stuff that really resonates with you.
Well, as we mentioned, Sunset Boulevard. You know, I love
Hmm.
black and white. I love noir films. I love foreign films as well. I mean, there was a theater on 95th Street called Athalia that had, films that there's a symphony theater on 95th and Broadway, and then I figured out a way how to sneak down into the Thalia to watch these movies that were like subtitled, and I would read. I couldn't understand what they were, but they were like so beautiful, and like all these French actresses and what have you, and like Le Belle Epoque and The Bicycle Thief and all this kind of stuff. But as I grew older, right, then I realized how much why I loved them just from an initial exposure to them, right? Then I was like, okay, so it wasn't just the storytelling because I didn't really integrate, the story. It was more of the filmmaking itself, the editing,
The language of cinema.
language, how to shoot in grayscales and how to use shadows and all that kind of stuff. And it was just, that was a great exposure and a great exposure for being a New York kid because you did have these old art houses, which
Hmm.
unfortunately have gone by the way of the dinosaur right now.
There was, for me, a movie place that I would go to was, again, we're talking the 2000s, but it was a place that just, you would walk downstairs. It was like J and V or something. I forget the name of it. It was Midtownish, and
Mhm.
essentially was actually Lower Manhattan. Never mind. And you would go downstairs, and there'd be tons of VHS DVDs, and I discovered so many movies from that place, and that got me into collecting just weird stuff.
Yeah.
And then it went, I haven't been there in a while. I think it might have closed down. And DVDs are obviously not the market they used to be. Now it's Blu-ray and streaming. But I discovered a lot through that too. I wasn't a theater guy, and also Staten Island, we had crappy theaters. And at the
Yeah.
time growing up, it was already blockbusters. Like when I was a kid, it was Ghostbusters 2. And then, I saw Jurassic Park. So it was all the Spielberg kind of
Yeah.
big budget.
Yeah.
I came to appreciate it later, the more subtle and artistic side of cinema.
Yeah, I mean, when you have lower budgeted things, you really have to think outside the box to get things done. I mean, I know with Brothers McMullen, we were like on the fly, we were trying to steal locations. Sometimes we would see Ed, talking to a cop who was like about to bust us or move us along. And thankfully, Ed's dad is a cop, so he just like flashed a little badge and we were good to go. But we had to hurry up. Do you know what I mean? And it was guerrilla filmmaking at its best, and that was one of the things that Brothers McMullen did is like it gave the indie market and it gave the indie industry itself a jolt in the arm because at Sundance, it was 10 years old at that point. It was kind of crushing under the weight of its own fabulousness. And they were having films that were $30 million budgets, $40 million budgets, exec produced by Spike Lee and all this kind of, it's like, really the spirit of independent filmmaking. And when we finally got accepted to Sundance, they had something that they could hold up as a true independent feature, right? And it wound up, making about 40 million bucks and got sold for 5 million bucks by just Fox Searchlight, which was their very first acquisition.
That's amazing. I have to look this up after this because I was just watching something about low budget movies making so much on their, initial budget. So that's fascinating. Yeah. For me, the more interesting stuff like the horror movies and the sci-fi movies from the 80s that are not the highest budget, but it's fun to watch as a viewer because the sets are real. Yes. The practical effects had to be clever. Yes. Like John Carpenter's Dark Star. I mean, this is Carpenter and O'Bannon, but some of the effects in that are just really extremely low budget, but really well done.
Really well done. And a film like Saw as well, right? And the entire Saw franchise, right?
That changed a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think Saw was made for like $300,000, and the second one, they were like, since they made so much money, hey, we're gonna do it. No, they did like $1.5 million on their second, right? It's like, so as long as you are like faithful and you don't try and like trick your audiences, because audiences are pretty smart, right? And they don't want to be fooled. They want to be entertained, but they also want the honesty of the filmmaking itself. They may not be able to like put it into words, but they know when they're being fooled or when they're being really, really honestly entertained.
That's a great way to put it, Jack, truthfully. Yeah. I mean, something that you do know as a viewer, but you don't know how to articulate it, and that's perfect. As Mike from Red Letter Media would say, you may not have noticed it, but your brain did. And I always remember that because there are times where I'm like, why does this movie feel weird, or why am I not involved? Like, you have a modern example of Top Gun Maverick versus a Marvel movie, which I do like the Marvel movies well enough, but the special effects start to become all very homogenized, and it's like, oh my God, they just threw millions of dollars at a team of hundreds of computer programmers and graphic designers, which is great, and I'm glad the industry's there. But when you see Top Gun Maverick, part of the movie's appeal is, oh, I know that they were in the sky. I know that they got real pilots, jets. A lot of this was done for real, and that movie just made over $1 billion.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Just amazing.
And audiences love it. And so I do have to ask one more cinema question. I just watched Paths of Glory last night for the first time. I'm a big Kubrick guy. He's my favorite director.
Well,
Thoughts?
You and I have even more in common then, okay? Because I've been a big, even Barry Lyndon, right?
That's my favorite Kubrick.
I love Barry Lyndon, and I love all of Kubrick's stuff. I mean, it's just,
What a body of work, huh?
I mean, Eyes Wide Shut, his final film is kind of like, oh my God, this guy was like really going somewhere with it, right? And you can always tell a Kubrick film, right? When a director has his stamp on it, you can just look at it from a shot and an angle that that's a Kubrick shot. Those long shots, those long dolly shots, like in The Shining. And it's just like, it's like, and you're panning back and slowly, what the hell's going to happen, right? It always has that air of suspense that you just, what's around? Oh my God. And it's just a master because he was an incredible cinematographer to begin with.
He was a photographer in his youth. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And he had some of these, I saw a retrospective of his about all the pictures that he would take in the subways back in the 50s.
For Look magazine, it was called.
The black and white that he used was just incredible.
Yeah. his choice of lenses. I mean, that's why Barry Lyndon is a fantastic movie. It's my favorite of his. It took maybe 5 or 6 viewings to get there, but now I think it really is. But the lenses and the way he actually commissioned NASA, got one of their lenses for the low light scenes. Love that stuff. Yeah.
Amazing. And you see, Dr. Strangelove and his use of Peter Sellers was just amazing. And then you see Sellers doing like a great job in something like Lolita, right? And it's just like when there's a collaboration between an actor and a director, that's absolute gold. Absolute gold. Because they have a shorthand, right? They probably don't even have to speak as to what it is they want from each other.
Fantastic. And also Malcolm McDowell and Kubrick together, that was a great combo. Have you had that, Jack, with directors where you felt a real simpatico?
Well, yeah, I mean, Ed Burns and I certainly did, and but that was because we were in such close quarters for so long. 8 months on weekends is kind of tough to keep it together. I think we only lost 1 or 2 crew members over that 8-month period, which is kind of remarkable. Not that we had that large of a crew to begin with. I mean, God, we didn't even have like Polaroids for continuity. So we had to remember, did we shave that day and what have you. So, and then going to Sundance and, bonding over that experience because we thought for sure we would get maybe an audience appeal award. The buzz on it was pretty good and what have you. But then when it came down to like the ceremony and Samuel L. Jackson was the one who, announced that we were going to be the grand jury prize winners. It's just like these are bonds that you will, continue on through life, right? I've worked with many great directors. I was directed in a stage play by Blake Edwards, which was wonderful. And it was great having Julie Andrews there giving you notes every day because she was fantastic. But it's like every director I work with, and now they're getting younger, and there are more female directors, which I think is great because it gives another voice to an entirely different
viewpoint, right? And
totally different viewpoint.
Yeah,
and
Greta Gerwig comes to mind.
Yeah, and now I'm producing, and I have a supporting lead in a new film called Gentle Boy, which just got greenlit. And it's written by a young African American. It's being directed by a young African American. And it tells a story of a young African American who's trying to find himself through his art and his photography that his mother isn't really cool with, which is not a really black or white story. It's a universal story, right? It's a human story. And we are just so excited to start, shooting this thing. We start shooting September 22nd.
That's great. That was actually, I was going to save that to the end of what your next project is. But since we're on the topic, what else do you have coming up, Jack? I'm just curious.
Well, I've got a couple of things that I've written myself. One is a television series called Meet the McGillicuddies. It's about an Irish widower who comes over to America trying to find his way after he lost the love of his life. And he settles in Hell's Kitchen with his Uncle Declan and his Aunt Maggie. And while the gentrification of the Upper West Side is happening right now, so there's that political element going on. And he's just trying to find his way. He was a great singer in Ireland. He was known as a great footballer in Ireland. And he's got 3 very precocious children that he's bringing over from Ireland. So I was just in Ireland and I wanted to pitch it, at the Galway Film Festival, but I ran out of time and couldn't make it. But I'm going to go back and keep my connection strong over there and get that thing done.
That's cool.
So been back to writing as well.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's got to be a completely different exercise for your brain too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for me, I prefer the off-the-cuff style of. I'm definitely a product of my generation and what I do with streaming and YouTube and stuff. I like that I don't have to prep too much. But when it comes to music, I might spend, if I'm lucky, a day on lyrics. If I'm not lucky, or if it needs some time, it could take a year on and off here and there, just for the words to arrive. But for writing, do you find, now that you're writing again, you find as you've had this career and you had this experience, does it come a little easier or?
Well, every project is different, right? And then you have to think in terms of how, the character is going to think, right? And as we say in acting, it's like the thoughts of the actor should be the thoughts of the character, right? In order to give it that organic feel, that life to a performance that people, respond to. As you're writing, right, you start thinking about arcs and you start thinking a little bit ahead. And then sometimes I'll write, for 3, 4 hours a day, put it down, and I won't come back to it, for maybe a couple of days. And if I still like it, or if I think it needs tweaks, then I can like go ahead and do that. And before you know it, I've got like 8 episodes written, and they're all really, really good. So I had a couple of online readings of it with a cast of about 7, which was great. And, it was great for the writer to hear his words. Then you can, start to like rule in and rule out what's good and what's not, what works, what joke lands here, what doesn't land there, and what have you. So table reads are invaluable to a writer. Absolutely. And so that process is like, and I've read 1,000 scripts at least, and I know what's good and I know what's not. I know what drags, I know what needs to be cut, I know what, all that kind of stuff. But to put that into practice for myself is something entirely.
Sure. Well, I that sounds great. I mean, something that you can do for yourself. I mean, one of the things I've heard for Hollywood is write your own stuff and then you give yourself your own roles. And a lot of people come up that way. But in your case, now that you're in this stage of your career where you're getting this revival, for example, of Rem, and you have all these people paying attention, and you have so many credits here now, over 80 at least, for just acting, I think, on IMDb. It's interesting to see you go and try to come up with something that you can produce. Are you going to direct it?
No, but I directed a feature last October, so that's being developed right now.
Wow, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, this is my first my directorial debut. So
Nice, Jack. That's great.
now it's in the hands of the editor. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
films are done 3 times, right? They're written, they're shot, they're edited. Right?
yeah. As an editor, I was a public access editor, and I have no idea how to edit a movie. But I'll tell you what, I could get a YouTube video for you. I could get some wacky noises in there, maybe a strange noise, maybe a fart noise. That's what. Listen, it's the YouTube game. You got to know how to play it.
Maybe a singing superhero.
Yeah. So I want to ask a couple more things in regards to Rem, because let's go back to that, and maybe we can find a good spot to resolve. But I had a question from a viewer.
Okay.
Will there be Remlazar action figures? That was a question I received.
The short answer, yes.
That's great.
The long answer, yes.
It's good. I might borrow that. So you have this this cult classic kind of movie now, and there's a kind of a category. I mean, it was on a program called Best of the Worst. So I'm going to ask you a question that, you have a career now that is actually completely impressive and very legitimate, but you also have this little cult classic that you really enjoy, that it's getting this attention. But you do know that some people are watching it the same way they watch Troll 2 in the room. How do you feel about that, Jack?
I can't speak for anybody else's observation or how it affects them. That speaks more to them than it does anything else. All I know is that we set out to do something, and I think that we accomplished it. I mean, I've read all the comments, good and bad, mostly good.
Yeah.
And, sometimes, the hurtful comments, it's hard for me to like let go of the fact that, Remlazar melts steel beams, right? I mean, how do you make that leap from 1987 to like 2001? It doesn't really make sense, but it caught on. And, I can't explain it. But I don't really pay much attention to that kind of stuff, because again, that's not for me to say. Somebody makes a comment, it gets commented on, and before you know it, it's a whole big thing. Yeah, it's a thing. And wish that people would be more mindful of the fact that 3,000 people lost their lives on that day. And Rem had nothing to do with it.
Right. And that's the important thing. Now, here's the thing. A lot of us have dark senses of humor. Now, I, as a New Yorker, clearly, I'm sure, yeah. As a New Yorker, we know, I mean, we experienced it in a way that most people didn't. However, that was, to me, what made that a thing, is just the fact that Rich Evans predicted that you were going there to the Trade Center in the film. If he didn't make that prediction, that probably wouldn't have been much of a thing. Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
It's just the fact that he was able to figure that out. But regardless, that's a Red Letter Media dark sense of humor kind of thing. Yeah. But even so, you have a movie like Troll 2, you have a movie like The Room. The creators, I've met Tommy Wiseau. I've gone to a screening of The Room, and fascinating guy.
Fascinating.
And have you seen these films?
Oh, yes. Loved them. Loved them.
That's great.
They're as bizarre as it gets, and it's just like, oh my God, you don't think of them because that's not really your main, right? Your main avenue of appetite. But I mean, once you see something like that, it's like you can't unsee it, and you just like sit back and you marvel at somebody's
choices,
dogged determination, right? As tone deaf as it might be at some point, right? You just go, oh, well, he went for it. He got it out there. And my God, it's like hilarious. And to see what James Franco did with it was just, amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, the fact that it was turned into a book and then a feature film, unbelievable. Yeah. But that kind of thing, I think, is different than Rem, because you guys had a goal to make something for kids that was positive. It's clearly a different audience kind of thing, as opposed to whatever world Tommy was in when he made that movie. And like you said, the determination, the choices that he made were certainly choices.
Yes.
But I think Rem is a little different, and I think people will enjoy Rem for the music. They'll enjoy it because there are bizarre things that you see as an adult in 2022. You're watching a low-budget film for kids in the late 80s. So there's going to be a disconnect between the audiences. Yeah,
there's no question about it. And, going all the way back, it's kind of like, what were our sensibilities back then? And when I first got that phone call from that director in Los Angeles, he kept asking me, he goes, well, did you know, how abstract those shots were going to be, and how incredible that the editing was like moving things along, and you have like a doo-wop, you have a rapper, and then you got a classical violinist like within like a 6-minute period. And I said to him, honestly, I don't think we knew what we were doing, but we were having fun doing it. That was like the first day of filming, right? Those 3 sequences, which is like mind-blowing.
A lot done in one day.
It was just absolutely crazy. So,
well, I'll say this: the fun of the process is there on screen. That's what's fun about the movie. There are parts of the movie where, of course, you're going to watch stuff happen and you're going to say, well, I want to hear the next song, or I want to see something happen. But again, going back to the sensibility of the late 80s versus now, the attention span that we have now is so short from phones and from like blurbs of things online. But I think the movie's pretty brisk for, it's about an hour, and it moves along.
48 minutes. 48 minutes, yeah.
Not too bad.
No.
So,
great.
So Jack, you have this screening coming up.
Yes.
You're going to be showing this to an audience in Manhattan. Yes. Have you experienced something like this before with Rem?
Not with Rem. The only time I saw the initial screening of Remlazar back in 1989, with about, I don't know, maybe 30 people, and I forget, I mean, the projector that we used was like just maybe 1 or 2 steps up from a kinescope, right? And it wasn't very big, but it was really, really well received because the sound system was very good. So that was key. This is going to be altogether a new experience for me with Rem. I remember sitting in the very first screening of Sundance of Brothers McMullen, where the audience realized a 400-seat theater at the Egyptian, this old palace, this old grand old lady of a theater, And once the audience realized that I was about to cheat on my wife, they started booing. And my friend sitting next to me goes, "My God, they're booing you." And I go, "Hey, I'm doing my job."
Exactly. It's like a villain in a TV show or a movie, and then, I just wish audiences,
By the way.
yeah, I wish audiences were able to separate the actor from the role a little bit more, because Twitter has made people just say whatever they want. It's like, yeah, that's an actor. That's an actor. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So you have the screenings coming up. You've got the Blu-ray coming out, right?
Blu-ray's coming up. Yeah, you can like pre-sale right now, as a matter of fact.
So you can do that. You're gonna have
there's only 2 seats left for the added screening. So
by the time this airs, it might be sold out, but it's amazing. You got 2 nights at Alamo. That's great.
Yeah.
I have to wonder though, Jack.
Yeah.
What's next for Rem? Do you have any tentative plans?
Well, Scott and I were just starting to kick it around a little bit. Maybe we, take it on the road or something like that. I don't know, screenings in Chicago or Milwaukee where the Red Letter Media guys are, stuff like that. I know they're getting an advance copy, so they're going to be like hawking it as well. And we actually asked them if they wanted to be part of the featurette. And they deferred. They said, we're going to leave this to you guys, and just get us the advanced copy of the Blu-ray, and we'll definitely pop it on there.
Right?
Yeah.
Would you ever consider putting on the blue suit again?
I had been asked about that. And as much as I would love to think that I look like that, physically I look like that. My face doesn't look like that, and it wouldn't look very good in a blue wig right now. But I just ordered a pair of Converse high tops, and I'm going to spray paint them gold. So that's going to be kind of cool.
That's fantastic to hear. Jack, I'm going to let you go for now. And I know we're going to meet in person at some point, some point soon. Yeah, not too long from now. And I have to say, I'm really happy for you, and I really enjoyed speaking to you. My community has really taken to Rem, and you've seen, like we talked about earlier, there was a Resident Evil 2 mod, like someone modded your character into Resident Evil 2. Fantastic. That's actually a friend of mine that did that. And Rem has shown up in a lot of really weird spaces on the internet lately, and especially in my community. And it's a gift, because as soon as I play that song, people will just type the rest of the lyrics. Yeah. So that's something that it's enjoyable to have that, honestly. It's just one of those things that just became fun.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you for, giving us that platform and giving us that exposure, because it's going to help a lot. For an awful lot of reasons. I mean, it's just like getting the word out there, that kindness and empathy can be cool too,
I think that's important, especially online, and something that going forward, whether or not we take the Remlazar thing and we laugh at it, or we just like the song, there is an aspect of it that I do wish was a little bit more prevalent, and something that as I get older, I learn and appreciate more, which is just having empathy for others and having fun along the way, maybe with a little music. It's fine.
Everything goes better with a little music.
I agree with that. Jack, it's been great, and I'm looking forward to future Remlazar, whatever it may be. And the Blu-ray extra features. I can't wait to see my dumb face, not used to being on camera.
You look great, you sound great, you make great points, and, I'm going to leave it right there.
All right. Well, thank you again. Once again, everybody, please take a look at the Remlazar Blu-ray. Where can people go to check out the Blu-ray and pre-order it?
Well, I can certainly get you to the link of it. You can go to...
I'll put the link in the comments.
Yeah, put the link in the comments, and then on Twitter, Found Footage, at Found Footage, they have all the links there. Or you can go to my Twitter page, at Official Lezar.
Okay, sounds good. Right. So once again, everybody, check out Remlazar. Jack, thank you. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Vinny. It's been a pleasure.
You too. Take care.
From another place, not from outer space, from some place even higher.